Just a quick little introduction to start things off over here. This video is the second half of our recording discussion, which the first half we talked about Kiesniver, and now we're about to talk about the next follow-up, Little Witch Academia. So, if you're wondering why there is no real intro to this, that is why. It was just breezed right through, so hopefully enjoy this one too. And on the completely opposite spectrum of Kiesniver's very, very slow burn stake of emotional feelings, then you have Little Witch Academia, which is just about let's just have fun. Let's just have and that was basically when I was done with Kiesniver, I was like, I just need some fun, and I was like, fine. And Little Witch, that was the trigger show that I was most excited to check out for the first time, because I was like, oh, I've seen so many clips and like images of this, and I've heard so many people talk about it, and I'm like, yes, it's like I want to see this. One slight note is I didn't love it as much as I wish. I thought this was going to be like a Kill la Kill Space Patrol Luluco thing of like, oh, this is just going to be like so excellent, so much fun. But in the end, it was just, oh, this is probably the most good trigger series of just like, oh, there may be we'll get to it. There's like one major thing that kind of like bugs me, kind of in the similar way of like stuff that bugged me in Kiesniver, but everything else is just like, oh no, this is good, this is fun, I like these, I love these characters. It's like I like how the way the story goes, I like the animation, everything. It's just it's a fun world. It is just a fun series. It reminds me of the most of, especially because so much of it is very episodic. It reminds me so much, and like the way like the jokes are written and all. It's the most Western, in a good way. This is the most Western television, like it's the most Western anime I've ever seen, because it's like I feel like if you didn't tell anybody that this was produced in Japan and like aired it on Cartoon Network or whatever, it's like people would be like, oh yeah, this is an anime, this is like another Avatar anime inspired cartoon. It's like, oh, you could tell, like just taking it like straight off, it's just the way it's told, and it's like, oh, it's just it's such a feel good, like just well executed series. And it's like, oh, there isn't like, so there probably is like going to be a lot for us to dissect going in, but it's just on the safest. It's like, oh, this is one. Or it's like, I wouldn't mind just kind of putting on a random episode and just kind of chilling back and just watching it. It's like, it's one of those type of series.
Maybe not with Cartoon Network, but definitely Netflix, because I remember when this was released, this had the whole shenanigans of I'm not sure if it's all North America, but at least the US. Like Little Witch Academia is officially Netflix's Little Witch Academia, or some shenanigans bullshit because of licensing fees. But yeah, this is one of those animes where they put at the beginning that like it's a Netflix original, even though it has nothing to do with Netflix. It was just the people who were gonna show it in the States. But there was all this drama when it was releasing, just because of the way Netflix does their hosting and their streaming. I remember this was kind of the first anime where I was like learning about the issues with simuldubs, and the fact that they were holding back the Netflix episodes to essentially build up the episode library, because Netflix's business model is it's built on you binging episodes. That actually is how they make money. So they, rather than most other anime hosting sites releasing the episode like once it airs, and then, or once it's dubbed and releasing it that week, they were waiting multiple weeks to release a whole chunk of the episodes. And then I believe they divided it up by the seasons. So I think you got the first 13 episodes all released together, and then they released the second half of the series in one big chunk as well.
Yeah, so it was like, they aired it between January to June 2017 is when it was aired in Japanese, and then the Netflix release was the first 13 episodes was June 30th 2017, and then the final 12 episodes were August 15th 2017. So again, and then they had them split up, as 2 seasons,
which is crazy.
So it's like, they just, because they want to do, because Netflix has their whole weird thing of like, oh, they don't want to, they haven't learned that, oh, people actually like having things released weekly, and it's like, oh, that's actually a good thing because it results in like Amazon, like Disney Plus has been doing it, Amazon has been doing it now, of like, oh, it keeps these series being more relevant and makes people want to keep going back more and more. But it's like Netflix is just stuck in that binging thing, because like, yeah, like everybody talks about with Pokemon, where it's like, oh, Pokemon, like instead of the episodes coming out as they're coming out, it's like several weeks later, then they just put a whole bunch of episodes up, and then you got to wait several more weeks later, then more episodes come up, and it's like, and this won't be the first time that Netflix does this with a Trigger project.
It's why it seems like a weird segue to bring up, but it's just mostly because it repeats. It actually comes back later again, so I figured it was at least appropriate to introduce at least the concepts here. Just that, yeah, there are some issues with how some of these animes all get released and stuff, and it feels really sad. I mean, then you throw in like all the added layers and complications of like licensings, and then licensings of the dub, because for both Kiznaiver and Little Witch, this was my most recent. I watched the dub for both, so just for full clarification on that, and I enjoyed both of them. We already talked about Kiznaiver's, but Little Witch Little Witch Academia has an amazing dub that I think adds, like you said, to kind of that identity as a very Western anime, and it's very true. I believe like there's a lot of interviews where they say like that for the animation style for Little Witch Academia, they were inspired by a lot of Western animation things like Looney Tunes and stuff. So I mean, there's a whole episode that verifies that they are a fan of of Hanna and Barbera.
Oh, you mentioned, like, it has like a really great cast. It's like a lot of them are like, yeah, like there are a bunch of them that you recognize from like Kill la Kill. It's like, oh, you got Erica Mendez, who was Ryuko, is Akko.
She will be our protag-kun for
once
this
again,
series.
yep.
She has one superpower, and I hope you remember it, because I mean the show tries to make sure you do, because it's the message of the show is believe in yourself. All right, so she has that one power, and gosh darn it, she's milked it for everything it's worth and has saved the world because of it. So good for her. Good for her.
It is fun. It is funny because Erica Mendez is doing a completely, like, I mean, Erica Mendez kind of has like three kind of tones. She has that very like low, gruff, like bad girl tone that she does with Ryuko. Then she has the very high pitched, squeaky, very like excited voice that she does for Akko. And then there's just kind of her middle regular voice. So it's like, it's kind of funny seeing like the two. It's kind of funny because what's her Amanda's voice sounds so much like Erica Mendez's Ryuko voice that I was like, honestly, she could probably just do both.
Just pull it.
And she's done that in ReZero. She uses both. Like, she uses her Ryuko voice to play Puck, and she uses her Akko voice to play Petra. So it's like you could have just done that. Oh, and we there's Stephanie Sia, who was a Nui Harame, and she's also been in, like, she's the main girl in Your Name. She's a Julie in Korra. It's like she's a great voice actress. Laura Post, who's Diana, played she was Ragyo in Kill la Kill, and just like we mentioned in that, she was Isabella in Promised Neverland, and Kasumi in Persona 5 Royal. And yeah, this is where I kind of made the joke where it's like, oh, she doesn't sound anything like Kasumi in there. And it's like, Diana, I could very much, it's a much more confident, and it's a much more confident version of her, but it's like, oh yeah, I can definitely hear that voice coming out of her. And there was also like little void, like I noticed Morgana's voice was the author. One of Diana's cousins is the music, is the Symphony Regalia girl from Kill la Kill. It's like, yeah, like there the other voices are like ones where like I really like but I didn't recognize, like Susie's voice is like I didn't recognize who she was. I didn't mention, Stephanie Sia is Lotte. So Susie's voice Susie's voice I didn't recognize. I didn't recognize. Ursula's voice is like one I really liked her, like her performance, but like, I tried looking up who, like, it's Alexis Nichols. I tried looking up and it doesn't seem like she's been in anything else, which is like a big surprise for me, because I'm like, oh,
it's a very distinct performance. It's very good. Like I love her whole voice, just her whole, because it suits the whole range of the character. We'll get to that. we'll get to that.
Yeah, and then it's like, yeah, then you, Amanda is another voice where it's like I didn't really recognize like her. It's like, yeah, like all of these guys have like, yeah, they've been in like stuff and like been in like those animes. Just like those three were like the main ones of like, oh yeah, those were Kill la Kill, those were Kill la Kill like voice actors. So they were obviously easily popped up. But yeah, it's like, and yeah, I believe because I always like looked at like the credit, like because at the very end they have like the English credits and like, and you see like the cast and like the crew worked on it. I know like Laura Post, I think like directed like most of the episodes, so it's like, oh, that's one where it's like, oh, she was like kind of like she either directed, I think Erica Mendez even herself kind of either directed or wrote the translation for a couple of episodes. It's like, oh, like that, it's like a cool little like added thing to it. And another really interesting thing that's worth mentioning about Little Witch Academia is that it isn't just a TV series. It for all intents and purposes, Little Witch Academia is Trigger's first project. It's like, yeah, like Kill la Kill is their first full series, Inferno Cop is their first thing that came out, but Little Witch Academia started off as a 25 minute theatrical short that was like released, I believe, yeah, it was March 2013. It was released during an animation film festival, and the fact that it was released early 2013, so it's like, oh, this is very clearly they were working on this for most of 2012. So this was Trigger's first, like this was their project. They're like, okay, this is how we show off what we're going to do. And it's like, so not only is it a great showcase for these animators and what they can do when they're like given the time to really put all their efforts into a project like this, but also just works as like a great, like a pilot. It's like, because again, like once you watch the series, you realize that, oh, nothing in this and the future, the next Little Witch project after this, they don't actually play into the series at all, but they're very much cases of like, oh, they're selling you on, these are the characters, and this is what the story is going to be about before you actually get into the real story. Like, yeah, basically, like, just like any kind of, just like pretty much any pilot that's being made to sell a series. And I think it does. I think as a pilot, it is like legitimately great, and has just an animation showcase is phenomenal. Because I was like, I was not expecting like how gorgeous and how fluid the animation was going to be, because Trigger's always working on TV budgets, so they always look great, but they're always taking their shortcuts. But it's like here, it's just everything is just
it's on
pixel
max.
Perfect. Yeah.
No, full disclosure, I came into my rewatch like believing, Little Witch is not a magical girl show. I know with Kill la Kill, I kind of have that whole belief there, but not Little Witch, and it's just because some things are not really like super in the genre. And I was thinking at first, because like, well, for one, there's not a transformation sequence. That was incorrect. So on my rewatch, Akko has a whole transformation sequence where she puts on her hat and everything, and she says she's Little Witch ready. And I was like, oh shit, put my foot in my mouth. This very well could be. But I don't think it really like relies heavily on like it's in the genre as much as like Kill la Kill is. I feel like with Little Witch Academia, it's a show about teachers, or it's a show about that relationship between someone who teaches someone else a thing, between the people that make things that inspire people and the people that are inspired by those things. That's kind of, if you want to like ever like disargue out Trigger in Little Witch Academia, like that's kind of in the identity, that's hardwired into the show, that this is a show about people that have inspired you, and about the people that you will inspire if you believe in yourself. Again, that's also the big message of the show. And I like that. I love that a lot with Little Witch Academia, because full preference, with other witch and wizard material that's out like at the same time, a lot of it does get compared to, especially since Little Witch Academia does seem heavily to be inspired by Harry Potter. Like if you watch like the pilot and everything, or even in the movie, there's a Union Jack. Like it's less explicit in like the series, but it's more explicit in the shorter material. So a witch wizard school in the UK, like you can't not compare it to some of the ideas and some of the themes that are in Harry Potter as well. I mean, you can still look at both of the material, Harry Potter and Little Witch Academia, completely independently of each other, and you can still get full enjoyment out of either or. But no, there is a lot of comparison between, you can start just like with the main character. Uh, Akko is really inspired by like other characters, like the worst witch. She does have kind of some Potter aspects to her, just as she's coming into wizard or witching world, with the blanks, not with a blank slate actually, but just without real knowledge of how things work. For her, it's kind of like in a nice way to say it, ignorance of just kind of how magic works. She has an idea of what she believes magic works. She's worked very hard to, develop her own sense of what magic is, but it's not quite what the reality of how magic actually works. So, that allows her to function as, our character that exposes us to the world, that, through the lens that we can learn how magic works. Because Little Witch Academia does a lot of good stuff about explaining the rules and the limitations on how magic works. Like, magic almost has a science to it in this show. The show is very clever enough to note it on its own, especially once Croy gets introduced. I love Croy. None of you are allowed to say mean things about Croy. She did nothing wrong. But yeah, I know. We'll get there.
We'll get there. But I think the most interesting thing about the I think the most interesting about the whole series is like the world building. It's just kind of like this idea of, this is a modern world. This is a modern world that like, the modern world has evolved and magic has always existed and magic has existed alongside. But now we've gotten to the point where it's like, there isn't as much magic in the world versus technology. And it's like, technology is everywhere in the world. So it's like, why rely on magic, which isn't like, magic can do a lot of stuff, but it isn't 100% reliable, versus technology, which, I mean, technology itself is quote unquote not 100%, but like in comparison to magic. So it's like, it's gotten to the point where magic is just kind of this side thing that like it's kind of like it's funny of like this it's the whole like kind of elite thing of magic is own. I mean the issue with the whole series is basically the magic people are like, why don't people appreciate and respect magic anymore, while at the same time they're being very selective and only focusing on the people with like the purest magic, and anybody
there
else
you go.
and then you get like Akko, who's like, again, Akko is like this like the side person who's like very interested in magic, but it's like, she comes from like a quote unquote non-magic family, so everybody looks down on her. And it's like, you see why people don't treat magic well, because you act as this kind of you act as this elitist group while you're basically slowly dying.
Yeah, and well, she's set up to be that. She's set up to be everything that the school is not looking for, because her and the best Gemini in the game, Diane, are like, they're meant to be set up as these foils, like these twin girls that are bonded by fate. Like, again, in the whole Kill la Kill sense, like, could they be best friends? Yes. Could they be girlfriends? Also, yes. But in this series, it's also still just subtext. And that's fine. And then it also does tie into more than like, there's school childhood rivals, and with Japanese culture and stuff, there's an emphasis on that, where you can have two females in an intense like younger relationship, and then it dissipates. What the dudes who wrote Darlings hope do is to get into mating relationships instead. But with Kill la Kill, or not Kill la Kill, but with Little Witch Academia, at least, I think the characters are some of my favorite. I think they're just so silly, and I mean, for one, Susie and I feel I relate to her on a molecular level. Like, just the idea of using all of your closest friends as guinea pigs while you forage for medicinal life on Earth. Like, yeah, no, that's my exact same calling as well.
Mushroom.
Through mushrooms, like, if I could be the Susie of cannabis, I would. Like, I'd be the most powerful witch. You have no idea. But I do like to, like, with the whole cast, what's really fun about them too is that Luna Nova, the school, the main setting of the show, it's an international school. It accepts students from all over the world. So, like characters like Susie, she's originally from the Philippines. Lotte is, I believe, from Norway or Sweden. She's Scandinavian, and then Akko is from Japan. They don't ever say like. I think they do. Well, maybe like once or twice, but just to at least prevent any confusions, because yeah, she's from Japan, coming to the UK to go to what she describes as the school that Shiny Chariot went to. This is very important. Like the number one important thing about Akko is that she always believes in herself. The number two most important thing about Akko is that she saw a magic show by Shiny Chariot and it made her love magic. So she's fully prepared to commit her life to meeting Shiny Chariot, being Shiny Chariot. She has spent her entire childhood obsessing over Shiny Chariot. She is the epitome of all things wonderful and magical that's associated with magic in Akko's mind there. And so, you know, it sets up this character that has all the aspiration, has all the energy, all the drive to, you know, just put all this energy out into the world. And so I think that's a really cool thing with Little Witch Academia, is that we start looking at, you know, students who are people that go to schools. I know a lot of media has high school as like a default, but it's kind of interesting to look at like, you know, education, just that, you know, in this world where, you know, energy or magic is depleting and there's less of it around, why would people be sending their children to a school to learn about it? And so it's really interesting that all of these characters have really fun motivations for what I mean, say that, but they all have different motivations for why they're at that school. And I think it's something that I think is really fun that the show actually explores, because it's something that, you know, the whole, like, again, other like magic schools won't really explore too much. But this one, it's like super important to their characterization. Like, it gives you your starting point for all the characters, because these are also very dynamic characters in this show. Like, the Akko of episode 1 is not the Akko of the last 3 frames of this show, and it's huge. On your first see-through, you might get it, but by your second, you're in tears the whole time. That's been the whole like rewatching Trigger experience for me, dude. It's been like, man, I remember this being emotional. I wonder how this is gonna go. It's like, oh, I can't see through the tears. I can't see.
I think it's really funny because Akko at various points to me kind of feels like she skirts the line of being annoying. It's like she doesn't fully go all the way, but there are points where it's just like, because her whole thing is that she's like the stereotypical troublemaker of like the one, like, yeah, she's trying her best, but she's also like doing things of like, oh, breaking the rules, causing trouble, not paying attention. And it's like, I think like not only is she doing that, but she's like doing it and like dragging her friends down, so like they have to like kind of suffer her punishment at the same time with her. And it's like those moments, like all the time I'm like poor Lotte, because it's like she's like doing nothing wrong. I mean, like so Susie most of the time isn't like her punishments are she's not being punished for what she's doing, but it's like, oh, Susie's doing her own like kind of craziness, so it's I'm like poor, but it's like Lotte isn't doing anything wrong, and like Akko is just causing so much shit, and I'm just like, come on, just Akko, can't you just pause? It's kind of like how I felt about Ryuko in a lot of ways, of just like, just stop and just kind of think for like just a couple seconds before you say and do anything, because you're gonna get everybody else in trouble.
Yeah. Well, I'm honestly surprised that movie Lotte did not just straight up stab Akko after she ripped like the music there.
Oh,
because I didn't see the
honestly in the Enchanted Parade. It's like, honestly, the first half of it, she's straight up unlikable on that. I'm like, God, it's like Akko is like she's because she's doing her like, oh, let's put on this parade, it's being all happy, and it's like she's just being like so controlling. She's being so controlling and being so kind of manipulative, and it's just like.
No, I agree. Like, so that's why there's subtle differences between like the different materials of Little Witch, but I'm always a big fan, if when in doubt, if you're having canonical and non-canonical issues, multi-timelines. Like, then everything is canonical. It's just on a different timeline. They're all happening at the same time. Like, save yourself some trouble and like let Schrodinger's cat do the work. Like, it's an easy fix there. But it is really cool, just the whole, because Little Witch also has its own sort of structure set up too, where the first couple episodes are about introducing Akko. They're about introducing her motivation, like for coming to witch school. They give her a win pretty early on because Akko actually manages to use trading card game logic to send. Well, she does. I was gonna say send someone to the Shadow Realm, but she does the opposite, and like beautiful butterflies emerge.
She resurrects someone.
She brings someone back from the Shadow Realm, the impossible. That's also kind of her gimmick with believing in herself.
Which that does lead me into the other thing that I was surprised about in terms of a character's portrayal is Diana, which is the fact that going in, I'm like, oh, I'm expecting Diana to be the stereotype, like again, like the type of character that we mentioned, the stereotypical rival asshole who's just kind of a dick for no reason. So like I'm expecting, okay, we're gonna do this, but when Diana shows up, I'm like, you know what? She isn't really doing anything wrong. It's like every time, like she's not only,
correct every time.
Every time she called, like it's just not like she's being a dick to Akko. She's calling her out for actual mistakes and being careless and like for not really like learning from her mistakes and just being like you just keep making things worse for yourself without even realizing how to become better. And I'm like, you know what? Like every time she speaks, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, you have a point. Like I'm not mad at you. I'm like, yeah, you're kind of and whenever like Diana like is proven wrong, it's like she's like, oh, I was wrong. Damn.
She's always been the fact that she actually backs up all her shit. Like that's where, again, it kind of ties where how Diana functions as the asshole character, but for a good reason versus like Noriko is like Diana is at least like every time she's telling Akko she's messing up, Akko's messing up hard. So she's always correct on there. She's backing it up by having, flawless magical skills. It'd be one thing if it gets annoying where it's like the two rivals are just both bad at school. It's like, what are y'all fighting at the bottom for? But I mean, it kind of ties into Akko's whole character where she considers, the best student to have ever been to Luna Nova, I think is how the movie phrases it, which I thought was outrageous that a teacher would say that out loud to the other students. But no, just Diana's whole status in the wizarding world of Little Witch, from her long family line, and then just her actual abilities being able to, because it's really weird, like the teachers mention her doing like once in like a millennia type things, and it's like, well then how come none of y'all are able to do this? But I think it's
also a thing where it's like where she's really good at magic, but it's not usually like that asshole character who is really good at magic is like they're proud, they're being really like proud and prideful of it and showing off and being like, ha, you can't do this, I can do it. But she doesn't do that. She either does what the work that she has to do, she fixes up Akko's mistakes. It's like every time like people like her be like, oh, like they want her to show off, and she's like, fine, I'll guess I'll do like it's her two friends who are the like her two friends. They are the assholes that are just like they're the stereotypical mean girls that are just like the ones that parent.
We're gonna get to a point where I'm gonna have to explain that these two girls are actually unforgivable. Like it's not even like they're being mean. Like no, these are two of the worst little monsters picking on a very sad girl's situation. Like no, the way that they treat her, no. Unforgivable.
They are quote unquote bitches.
That's exactly what they are. My goodness. Way to put it so appropriately and so concise.
It's like her and then later Diana's cousins, which are again like the stereotypical like stepsisters.
It probably makes sense. It's probably actually Diana's one flaw is that she surrounds herself with the worst people, but only because it's familiar. Like that's a problem. Gotta get that fixed. But it is really cool. So the show, from its opening, like throughout the show, the numbers 3 and 9 are pretty important. Like 3 not explicitly, it's just more because like they'll show like I know like in the second opening they do the three main characters holding their hands, the 3 main characters. There's also like one of the magic runes that's associated with like all the powerful magic that we'll get into. It's kind of basically in the shape of 3 hands. And just part of the world building for the series as well, they get into like the history of magic and that there were originally like 9 old witches, and that they were able to kind of maintain the status quo of what magic is at the current setting of the show. And of course, it's where Diana gets her lineage from. She's actually descended of one of the 9 witches. So I think it's just really cool just throughout the show. The show takes a lot of care to really develop the relationship, especially between the 3 main girls, between Akko, Lotte, and Susie. I mean, they don't work super actively on like Akko and Susie's, but just the minute interactions are always to the benefit of like building those 3 girls to make them like closer and more friends. Even if some of them are being assholes to each other, it's okay. It's part of the process. But then there's also secondary characters as well. I wouldn't even say that. It's just that there's a pretty good big cast that honestly, most of the characters get themselves an episode or 2 of personal time with Akko. I wish that there were more. Honestly, like, it's kind of weird that it would start to get a bit fillery, but if the nice thing about Little Witch's more westerny, more episodic type structure there is that a lot of stuff feels like it could be like moved around or could be added more in time. There's because you basically go through what would be about a year of school length possibly. Because they don't get super explicit, do they? On like the time, right?
They don't really say how long exactly, but it's like, but it's something where it's like, yeah, like the it's not like say in Harry Potter, where like, oh, the school year is like important, and it's like it's more so just kind of like, oh, it's like school stuff happens, and there's maybe like seasonal backdrops that kind of like just play for aesthetic purposes, but there's like, yeah, there's nothing really of like, oh yeah, it's important that this took place over an entire year or just a couple months. It's just like, right. Oh yeah, just a timeline happened, and this is when it happened.
But yeah, no, they it's because really early on they bring in Amanda, they bring in Constance and Yasmika, so that's really cool too. That it wasn't like, oh hey, we're gonna like save these characters for later. Like I love how they had a whole cast of girls and they were just ready to throw them at us, and all of them are great. Like there is not a bad girl in this show other than the Diana's 2 little gremlins.
I think it also helps that like again in the Enchanted Parade, which just a little slight like a slight thing. It's kind of like a weird situation with Little Witch. Is like that first original short came out in 2013. Then they put up a Kickstarter in order to make a second Little Witch short. I think it was originally supposed to be again another 25 minutes, but they ended up over exceeding their budget, so they ended up making it like a 55-minute like movie. So that became the Enchanted Parade. So like that was one where it's like it's just an extended story. It's like that's where Amanda, Jasminka, and Constance are introduced. So it's like, oh, they've already introduced them in this world. So it's like, oh, why wait? And it's like, oh, they introduced them as like early as possible in the series, which is good. And it's also funny like to look back on Enchanted Parade and see like all the other things that didn't make it into the series. Like they have these group of like bully boys that like just kind of like constantly like screw around with the girls because they're like, oh, magic stinks, and like just kind of wrecking shit. And then you have like the mayor from the Powerpuff Girls there for some reason.
Yeah, he is that. I'm so glad that got dropped though, because that would have gotten
that was weird. That was just a weird thing of like, oh,
but even like weird character stuff because they have Amanda as like a cat burglar thief, and they give her a whole dancer backstory. Instead, like I'd say in the show, she's just more of just a general sports girl, just sports ace. Like she's basically Trigger's excuse to have fun, bullet time movements and stuff on the broom, and then because they have a lot of great like broom scenes, not just with Amanda, but like later on there's Diane and Akko have amazing animation. Just they got all the budget for those broom flights, and I couldn't be more happy.
Yeah, and then you got like it's like Jasminka is the only one of them that doesn't get, because it's like how Constance gets an episode, Amanda gets an episode to her, Susie gets her whole dream weirdness of just like, oh yeah, Susie is effed up in the mind.
It's an entire tribute to all forms of animation, but also teaches you the life lesson that maximum indulgence control can sometimes lead to outbursts. So be careful on that. But I was a fan of all the possible Susies. Every single one that went before her, I was like, that's a valid Susie. That is also a valid Susie.
And then Lotte's big thing is, oh, she's a fan of Twilight cross with Outlander. And it was just like, oh, she's a big fan of that book series, and it's like, oh, the book series is like, because they were like, oh, it has like over like hundreds of novels,
of volumes.
And I'm like, how the fuck do you have hundreds of novel volumes? And it's like, oh, it's been passed down from different authors, and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Or it's written by Oda. It depends one or the other.
Well, manga is different than novel. Like, if it was a manga, then I'd be like, okay, that's kind of cute. But it's like novels, and I'm like, that fuck no.
Hey, it's okay. But no, because the whole Nightfall thing, it's a whole big amalgamation. Basically, yeah, of Twilight. And Doctor Who, because one of the characters just straight up dresses like Big Ben. I think that's also Lotte's episodes are both really, really fun. They're her whole, because the whole issue with Nightfall and her being a big fan is that there's a whole big, they basically have in-person community day, but Lotte is grounded, so she cannot attend community day for the new book launch.
Because of Akko.
Because Akko believed in herself a little too strong, and it got in the way, and they were stealing tarts / pies, which... Gotta be fair. If you're stealing things, then you're on your own. You gotta defend. Even if you believe you're in yourself completely, you might not get the way you want. But they have I think it's really fun though, because they do kind of show that whole nerd culture in that whole episode. Like you see grown people cosplaying. Everyone is at an event, and other than the two gremlins being assholes about people enjoying themselves, like it's basically celebrates that whole idea of fandom within that episode. Again, kind of going back to just the whole idea of this show being about things that people create that inspire others and the people that are inspired by their things. And this one kind of looks a little bit at like a parasocial relationship between Lotte and the author of Nightfall. Luckily, this is a nice, safe show, so they become best friends. It's okay. It's all good.
They play on like the whole idea of like, oh, the girl is like, because she starts off being like looking like she's the whole kind of like spoiled brat of like, the author is just like a dickhead, but it turns out it's like, oh no, she's just really upset because she's taken over writing the book, but it's like, oh, she's getting a lot of like, oh, angry hate online of like, oh, why are you putting the story in such like a weird direction? And it's like, oh, it's just that whole kind of like she wants to have Lotte like kind of take over the book, because like I just can't handle like the reception anymore. And it's like having and then having Lotte kind of giving her the drive of like, oh no, you want like just like do what you want to do because there are people out there who like it.
Yeah, angry comments are the true antagonists of Little Witch Academia. Like, and that's at multiple times, that hate comments are the bad guys. But no, the episode also too kind of touches then on, Akko's relationship with Chariot, because the episode kind of brings up the whole idea of admiring someone versus, wanting to be someone. So it also kind of goes again into that whole relationship, between like teachers and the people that they inspire and the things that you pass down to that next generation and what they learn from that. So I think it's kind of cool too that they look at that as well, that they firmly establish Akko's relationship with Shiny Chariot and how she inspired her and how that's motivating her to continue, how that is different to Lotte's aspiration and to her being inspired by the author of Nightfall, and how instead she wants to be more of a supportive person to her versus she not wanting to be her. So it's just really cool just looking at those ideas that they explore in this show, because even though like the show kind of gives a goofy vibe, I think it goes pretty deep if you look at like the ideas of like teaching and of inspiring people and of like kind of understanding that relationship between the people that you create by doing that. Again, just Trigger being the artist they are, they always love their favorite shows, and so they always want to reference their favorite shows. So I think it's really neat that they used this show as a way to kind of explore like those ideas. And like that's not even me like going way too deep or whatever. Like if you look at Akko's main weapon, you look at the shiny rod, eventually like the plot kind of reveals itself that she needs to basically find 7 words that will, fully awaken magical powers wherever. It's not actually that. but it basically it helps set Akko on her whole journey. Kind of, it gives her a slight chosen hero vibe, but I feel like she validates herself. Like she makes the right choices enough time that's like, you know what, even if she was just picked, the rod made the right choice. But like a lot of what the rod represents too is a lot of like self-help, like self-aspirational like messages. There are things about like not giving up, about it's all advice. Like this feels like a show about advice, to about giving advice to someone who like looked up to you, and how to relate with that.
Going into the series, because one of the other things I was going into the series is being all like, oh, I can't wait to see Little Witch Academia, because then I can finally stop making jokes about My Hero Academia, because they're both going to be totally different series. And then I start watching it, I'm like, oh no, this is like there's a lot of similar. I mean, obviously, in a whole thing of like, oh, this probably wasn't intentional, because it's all like traditional cliches. It's just kind of like, I mean, the whole thing of like Akko and her relationship with Ursula slash Chariot, which is like very much in a similar vein to Midoriya, his relationship with All Might. It's kind of like a weird thing where it's like, oh yeah, because Chariot is like,
I mean, she's spited in the magical
yeah,
world.
Spike.
Like
Yeah,
a lot of some of Akko's ridicule is just because she likes a clown. I guess like the equivalent would be like, who inspires you? Oh, it's this is my favorite clown. I once saw his show and it made me so happy. Like I guess it's kind of the equivalent to that.
It's kind of like this idea of like, oh yeah, what if you could look at, because Chariot starts off as like, yeah, because the story starts off with this idea of like, oh, she was around for a little bit and was this kind of like big performer that a lot of people liked, but it's like, yeah, she didn't really do much other than perform, so she's kind of seen as just this kind of like, oh, fluke thing of like, oh, she could have been good, but it's like, oh, but they just kind of see her as a joke. And it's kind of like an inverse of like, oh, All Might is like this all-powerful kind of like god that everybody looks up to, but it's like this thing of like, oh, so it's always it's very much in a sense of like, oh yeah, the person is somebody looking like the main character looking up to their idol and trying to like be like their idol, but there's always there's this kind of thing of like, oh, they're not only trying to do that, but then they end up by trying to be like them and like being like held up by them, they end up taking on like they don't become necessarily chosen ones, but they both end up like taking on duties that end up like kind of being similar to Joe. Like they're taking on more of a burden that they initially believe, but they're all for it. Like Midoriya with his one for all thing of like, oh, like I have the most powerful power in the world and I'm gonna have to take on like the biggest evil. Okay, let me do that. Like it's more hard work, but I have to do with that. And Akko, it's like, oh, she just wants to be able to learn magic. It's like, oh, now you need to like learn these like 7 magical words which will like bring magic back to the world, and she's like, oh, it's gonna be hard, but I'm gonna do it. So it's like, yeah, that very much that sense of like, that connection between the main character and their mentor figure.
And I love how the shows get super specific with Akko too, because like her motivation at the beginning, she says a bunch of, because it's usually because she's repeating it out is why, you know, it kind of gets built in, is, you know, to use magic to make people smile, to make people happy. She wants to entertain people. And then at the end, when she's on her quest to find the 7 words, her mission is really to use the words to meet Chariot. She doesn't want whatever even the words are for. She just wants the words because she knows it's the easiest way to meet Chariot. So I like how they get very specific with her on that, because it helps a lot with that characterization, because like you mentioned, Akko can be to some people it can be an annoying character, especially not even so much just like on, you know, bringing her friends down with her, but like just on the basic decision making. Just why did you make this choice? Why did you make this choice? Because, you know, again, you had to get the viewer to believe at the end there that her unrivaled belief in herself is the most powerful thing in the world. You have to start small. So you have to start by, well, at least her believing in herself is able to like get her out of, you know, the worst case scenario. Because even though they do get punished and they do get in trouble a lot, they don't really end up like in the worst case. They usually, you know, get away with it to last another day for wacky hijinks. So I like how the show kind of like slowly builds all that up with those early episodes. You have, you know, Lotte's episode, but like they only gave her that real small win at the beginning because, going back to the world building, I love just the whole mix of technology with magic. That's also the whole theme with the show too, is just that mixing of old and the new, and that creates good things, and that you shouldn't be afraid of doing that. But I love how like you get all these really fun, cool ideas. Like you get a whole episode where a fucking dragon Elon Musk is investing in cryptocurrency while at the same
dragon
time
does stocks. It's amazing.
He does stocks, and he's trying to bankrupt the school because the school doesn't have funding. Again, I like how the previous world building setup of, you know, that magic is finite, that it's not ample, that, you know, these are not the best of times for magic. I love how that's incorporated into, you know, the school setting, how they talk about school funding and stuff. Like they don't talk about how MHA or Hogwarts is funded ever. Like they don't talk about that. So I mean, not in like mainline stuff. Like obviously there's probably the deepest of lores, I'm sure. But no, I like how just in this simple story that they touch on like those concepts of how is the school making money, who is working in the school, how are they running the school, and you know they have all these clever ideas where, you know, they put a dragon with the stock market, or, you know, they put
the labor union,
fairies and labor unions together. Like some of these were super great, just like these different ideas and mashups of, you know, your stereotypical fantasy idea. And well, it's like if you're going to put in the modern day, put it in the modern day. And I do like that that's a pretty good episode too, because it kind of gives you like those moments where you think Diana is showing off, but it's like she's literally the only one who could read the contract. She saved the school from closing. Like she's not the bad guy. Like I think it's really funny that they have these moments that's like she's not the bad guy, but it's probably more of an editing trick than anything else. You still keeping these ideas where you're like, I don't know, maybe I don't like Diana, but you truly love Diana because she is the best.
Diana's more of like, Diana's like more of like, she like she isn't like it's more so of a case of like she's not perfect, because like you have like Akko's first win of like, she tries to fix the plant, and then things go all haywire, and she's like, oh, let me just destroy it, and Akko's like, no, don't destroy it, we need to like let it go because it's actually good, and then they go free, and then then she kind of realizes that, oh yeah, Akko was right. So it's like, oh, she has those moments of like, oh yeah, there's that. You have the moment when she's like, she's trying to talk down to the fairy labor union, because like she thinks she's being helpful, but she doesn't really understand. So then Akko kind of like shuts her down of being like, oh, she's a rich girl, she has a giant room, she has a giant room to herself, why are you listening to her? And it's like, oh no, yeah, Akko
she calls her an aristocrat.
Yeah. Aristocrat. Awesome. Yeah.
It's
yeah,
awesome,
and it's like,
dude.
And in that instance, he's like, oh yeah, she is kind of right. It's like, oh, like Diana isn't like trying to be, she isn't like trying to be malicious in there, but it's like, oh yeah, she just in that instance, she doesn't have like what it takes. And like even like there's like the episode, I think like right before that, where they're putting on the big presentation, and like, oh yeah, Akko's is they're assigned to do like oh the job where they have to basically like, oh, be sacrifice, and like her whole thing, like she's not being like, yeah, unlike the friends who are like, again, like laughing about it. Her whole thing is like, because of the whole thing where like, oh, Akko is like disappeared, and she thinks like, oh, did Akko abandon you or something like that? And it's like, oh, she's doing
it's like Diana just sees the role as like everyone has to do a job, like your job is to be the sacrifice. She's not like being mean, she's just trying to fill the role.
Yeah, and it's not even just a being mean, and just a like, oh, she's being considerate in her own way, because she's like, oh, she doesn't want like she doesn't want like Akko to abandon them, because like, oh, she wants her to do her job. And it's like, and then when Akko ends up like going like the extra mile and like being like, oh, we didn't just do the job, we actually like saved the spirit, and she's like, oh shit, like she's like, she has that moment at the end of the episode where she's like because when they go like, oh yeah, she didn't like, you still won because she broke the rules, but she's like, but is this right? It's like she has that moment of like kind of like, yeah, reconciliation of like, yeah, like what is right exactly.
Yeah, and well, that's just kind of like where you have like that difference between her personality and Akko's, because I mean that's like her big like social win, but that's after like, because the first half of the series is kind of her, you know, they introduce her high energy, like, oh, I'm fully motivated to be Shiny Chariot, and about kind of learning the steps where, you know, the episodes start kind of focusing around Akko learning to start, putting the focus into that, putting the work into, achieving those dreams. And I like how it's very literal in the show. There's multiple episodes. I don't know if it's to like, they try to make sure that like it's reinforced that like, hey, there's no plot twist, there's no plot hole inconsistency here. Like, this is a hard message that we wanted to make sure Akko got across, where, she starts to learn that she has to put in like study time into actually trying to practice the actual magic, as opposed to going off of all of the enthusiasm she had from childhood. Because they have the whole episode where she tries to find a fountain to find like that if she has hidden potential or if she has a chosen one future, and in both of those episodes, she instead decides that she's gonna instead put in the work, that she's going to there's one of the episodes like basically offers her the free future. It's like, hey, you can be the glamorous, magical, entertaining witch. Like, you just have to like abandon the current time, like just go to the future. And she, Akko, just kind of decides instead that she's gonna go through the daily, affirmations of, going to school, going to class, working on her magic, to eventually get to where she needs to, what she wants to be, because she still has all the belief in the world in herself that she's going to be a witch who can make everyone love magic and will make everyone smile with magic. And so in order to reach that, it's through Chariot mostly. She kind of learns like how Chariot's path was, how she had to like work hard to even do magic as well, and that was the only way she became a great witch, was through all that hard work and through all that determination. And so, and it's kind of where again that the show again turns into that advice for people that are inspired by your stuff. Is that all right? Then it's great that you want to be just like me, or be just always inspired by this thing that I made. But now if you want to be on that level, there's things you have to do with it. There's work involved in order to either have those skills or be at that level in order to create more for other people. And so it's just super weird. There's this whole thread line through the show of just, that whole academia. I think it's really great. Like it's a perfect name for this show, because it is about like, teaching people and what advice to give people.
And especially like when you see like Akko like actually like putting in, like, she isn't just like her trying to like breeze through everything, like at the beginning, especially when it's just her trying to breeze through everything. She's like, I just want to do the magic stuff. But then it gets to a point where like, oh, she's actually doing her, like she's trying to like do her studies, like, okay, I need to do this, I need to work hard. And when you see her actually trying and failing, it does feel like you want to like push her more than just her really not trying or doing it half-ass and failing, because then it's like, oh yeah, then that's your own fault. That's your own fault. But it's like, yeah, like by that time, then it's like, oh, she starts putting in the work, and even if she doesn't like go fully succeeding, it's like you can tell that she's putting her all. So it like, it does feel good in that way.
Oh yeah, one of the words I had the hardest time hearing was the one that they used on the big ghost, the one to basically free her soul or whatever. Like, the word translates to, don't compare yourself to others, just do the best that you can do. Like, I think it's just so amazing that the 7 words are just advice. They're just very, very good advice for to anyone about anything. But then, yeah, after that, that's usually because the ghost is the halfway point. Because before that, you had the whole moment where she flushed her professor, but it's okay because she's selfless, so she's able to pass the class, and that gives her kind of like her first academic win, really. And she also picks up some better transformation powers. That's also really a nice, cool thing throughout the show, is just so Akko, funny thing that we haven't brought this up, she can't fly a broom. Despite wanting to be a magical witch who wants to fly through the air and wants to be the greatest entertainer, can't fly a broom. She's tried to, but hasn't really had any luck with it. Don't know why. Seems suspicious, but she's working on her other magic, and so she's working on like her transformation magic, and it gets better throughout the show. It doesn't like become the best that you see even within the show, but she gets to a personal best at the end of the show in terms of transforming into magical creatures in the sky, which is one of her goals as well. So I do like, again, the show is very good about showing that incremental change in Akko, and especially the show doesn't have like a lot of episodes, but it's also not the shortest show ever. So like each episode seems, there's a couple that are 2-parters, it feels, but like each episode is giving you like important information just about in terms of like showing like, okay, here's the next baby step Akko is taking in this episode.
Yeah, with Akko's transformation, it's kind of done in a really like clever way where it's like, yeah, she never like, because like the whole idea with the transformation is that, oh, it's like it's like, oh, a full transformation of transforming into whatever thing like you're trying to, but it's like hers is always kind of like this half thing of like, oh, it's like like whenever she transforms into the animals, it's always like an Akko, it's an Akkoized version of that animal. Like, oh, when she's the mouse, it's like a little like it's a little mouse with a cute face. It's like when she turns into like when the bird, it's like she has like her own face on it. It's always like this the kind of halfway thing, but it's like even when she gets to the end, she kind of like it becomes more of like her charm and like her appeal in that form of magic rather than more than just a flaw. It's like, oh, that's just like, I mean, it works with what it gets to a point where it's like, oh, that's what she's striving for, and it works for exactly what she's accomplishing.
Which, like, again, to tie it in as like witchcraft being a metaphor for, you know, animation or anything that's taught to someone else, like, it's just really cool to show that, visualize that, you know, you don't need to do your best, you can just do you don't need to do the best, you just need to do your best. And people will take it as like the best thing ever, because, you know, no one knows like those limitations and stuff for the most part. Like, a lot of people won't know the backstage stuff of what it took to make something that inspired them. They just have the emotion that was conveyed to them. So I think that's just really cool that throughout the show, just that witchcraft kind of works as a really good metaphor for things like that. It gets a little more economical. Basically, yeah, after the whole witch or the spirit ceremony, and Akko has that really good, you know, academic win, that's when they start to bring in new characters, like a new professor. And that's where, you know...
Hi, villain! Clearly
Hi, villain? Are you sure they're... I mean, very misguided. I mean, I will redact what I said, that she has done some bad things. So
she is introduced to controlling the Phantom Ruby, and she's like all of her magical squares going around, and it's like it's fucking infinite run. And she's dressed in her very gay, flamboyant outfit of just trouncing around everything, and she's like in control everything. But when she's in her laboratory doing mad scientist, she's dressed like Kate McKinnon from Ghostbusters.
Yeah. It's like, hell, Susie dresses as Dexter.
She's like, crazy. Like, we've said this multiple times in our conversations, but it's like her and Chariot are like the most Professor X Magneto like relationship I've seen outside of X-Men in a long time. Of just like, oh, these two gay disasters that are making their issues everybody else's problems.
Like, we weren't talking about the girls when we mentioned how gay Little Witch is. No, we're talking about the professors, bro. Like, this is the good stuff.
But it's like you have the positive gay in Akko and Diana, and then you have the very toxic gay in the form of Chariot and Croy.
Dude, the fact that the second opening even does the whole, like, you know, these are...
The two characters walking past each other.
Will history repeat itself? And hold hands. And they hold hands, dude.
Yeah, like I still say it's like on like the scale of gay, I say Little Witch Academia is pretty gay. It's like if there was a second Little Witch Academia, I think it would be able to go all the way into full gay by just having them be like, oh, just go all the way with them. But it's like, yeah, like they still get pretty gay with Akko and Diana, and just their yeah.
Well, what would you argue is the most gay? Like, you say Kill la Kill, right?
I feel like the most gay is when you just say fuck it. Like, it's when I think full gay is in like when you're like establish a relationship that is like clear that this is a relationship, like no BS. It's like with Kill la Kill, it's like Mako asks Ryoko on a date, and then they go on a date, and it's like, yep, there it is. It's like with here, so yeah, it's like Akko and Diana of like, there's all of that symbolism, all that symmetry, all that imagery, and it's like, oh yeah, it is there, and it's beautiful. But it's like, oh, it's by the end of it, it's like, oh, they're not actually together, and it's like, oh, they still have their playful thing. So it's like, oh, it's not fully yet, but it's like if it went all the way, but it's very clear, like, yeah, if there was a second season, then it would go all the way, and it's like, oh, then I could say it's full gay. But right now, it's pretty gay. Like, it's not say for there are shows that are like, oh, subtly gay, and it's like, oh, like there's like you can kind of like see you can kind of like get kind of the imagery of, oh, this could be gay, but it's like, oh, it's like you're reading into it, but it's like, oh, here, this is like, oh, this isn't just reading into it, it's all, you can clearly see it. Yeah, again, the holding hands, them turning Super Saiyan at the end, they're like the whole like their dialogue to each other, it's like, oh yeah, it has that. But with and I think it were like the relationship, like in comparison to, again, Ursula and Croy, I think really pays off in like in a way that, again, that makes Diana work as such like a better like version of this rival character, and why I think kind of Croy stumbles in both, I mean, stumbles not in a writing way, but in a character way, in the sense that like she's the dickhead rival that I thought Diana was going to be, because there's even a point where it's exactly. Because you like the whole idea with Ursula and Croy is that Croy is like, that's one of the reasons why I can't really fully sympathize with Croy, because her motivation and like kind of her reasoning to like falling down this path is just pure useless petty garbage of just, I wanted to be special, like I wanted to be the specialist, but no, my friend who did nothing wrong gets chosen, and she just becomes so bad. Like, again, Ursula's the one who did nothing wrong. It's just she gets the shiny rod and is like, ooh, I want to do good magic, hey, can you help me? And she's like, yeah, sure, I'll help you, while at the time being like completely bitter, and to the point of like when she like tries to go and like accomplish her dream, she's like self-sabotaging her the entire time. And it's like, it gets to the point where it's like, yeah, now she goes to school and she's like willing to kill Akko just for her own like set. I mean, she makes her go up that tree, and it's like, what was gonna happen? Like, she gets to the top of the tree, she loses her magic, and what? She falls and dies. It's like,
dies. No, it's true. It's absolutely true. Well, just she's accomplished, because the second half of the show really works on trying to like build up, both of their characters there. Like, Croy has her like really cool introduction, like you said, she's basically infinite, but I just adore the pun of her riding on a broom that's a Roomba.
It's a Roomba,
because it works on literally every level. Like, there's not a level it doesn't work on. She rides on it, it cleans up dirt, it flies, like, it's genius. It's probably the most clever thing. Like, all other writing must cease. You aren't getting on the level of, check out my modern witch's Roomba. Like, it's definitely going to be probably like a joke in like the next Hocus Pocus movie, but I'll still laugh at it because I think that's incredibly clever. But, she's introduced, she revolutionizes magic in basically a day. It took, manipulating the labor union, but they got cell phones in the second half of this show, which was not something I was expecting.
They got tablets,
everything, and just because like with all the world building that they were setting up, it was more just to let y'all know that the crystal was like a limited range energy supply, because they start using that a lot within the story, just whether are they out of range, are they within a range of using magic. And I think it's really clever, that they got that all set up pretty well, that there were all of those moments never felt like why aren't they using magic? It's like they just explained why they could not use the magic. They were very wise in setting up the rules of magic. But yeah, she gets introduced, she revolutionizes magic, she kidnaps Akko to extract her memories for some reason. And then that's where we get like our official like spoilers for Little Witch. At the end of Little Witch, Ursula be Chariot, even though that's pretty, it's in the series, it seems pretty obvious from like the first episode. I don't remember if like the movie
the first movie ends with Ursula like turning her hair into Chariot's hair. So it's like the first movie straight up reveals that, oh yep, Ursula's Chariot, and then they kind of play with it a little, like more subtle, like they play with it again a little bit in the Enchanted Parade. So it's like, yeah, by the first episode, it's like, I mean, even if I assume, yeah, again, I guess they want to assume that no matter if you had watched the movie or not, it's like they make it pretty clear that Ursula is Chariot. Like they don't spell it out until you get to like the one where like, oh, the big tree, when she talks to the big tree spirit, and it straight up has her like fully
they have a conversation.
But it's like, before, but it's still pretty, it's very obvious.
Yeah, well, just because I feel that the show's also playing that as another play on your expectations, where it's like, coming into this show, probably, like you said, even if it's your first time, you'll get it, but like, even if it's like your 8th Triggers show, you'll probably be coming into the show expecting a twist, and you'll be like, well, is this the twist? And you're kind of led along with the show that, like, yeah, no, it's gonna be big, guys. Ursula's chariot, and y'all don't know, and you're kind of like looking at this like, okay, I'm gonna go along with your funny little twist. And so I think it's really fun that, like, the show still is able to have pretty impactful like twists at the end, with the whole Ursula chariot thing kind of being like, it seems like low hanging fruit is, it's kind of like what I'm getting at on that.
Well,
But
because I even said to you, it was like, yeah, for that first half of the season, I'm like, I don't completely trust Chariot and slash Ursula, because I'm like, I don't know like what her deal is, because it's like, yeah, they made the big secret is like what her deal is, like why is she here, and like what does she want, what is she doing, and then like once Croy comes in, it's like, okay, no, there's the villain right there, and it's like that's the whole thing. But then they do, like, by the end of the episode, like by the end of the series, they do have like a twist with Chariot, when it's like, oh yeah, the reason why Akko is as good as magic is because Chariot accidentally took it away from her. Oops. And it's like,
which is when this show like hit me full mode, like emotionally, was when that was all revealed. Because to me, the relationship between Akko and Professor Ursula and that whole chariot scene, or that whole dynamic there, is, with the if you look at the show again as like, a show about teachers, about things that people teach to others, Ursula slash Chariot, like, she represents the thing that most inspires Akko, but she's also, as they develop their actual academic relationship together, she's then the one who is actually responsible for getting Akko to learn how to use magic. And I don't feel like the show's trying to do that as like a whole, like, as an apology. I don't think the show's even trying to like remotely try to do that. But the thing is that it's so heartbreaking to me in the context of the story, just because, Akko proves time and time again that there is nothing more powerful in her than believing in herself and her love of Chariot. So the fact that, she spends the whole show idolizing Chariot, talking about Chariot, like, off camera and off, for a lot of these scenes, like, there's scenes of Akko just going on and on about how amazing Chariot is to Ursula, and Ursula's just like sitting there nodding like, yup, yeah. It's like, Akko remembers her shows more than she remembers her own show. It's that whole type of dynamic. And so I just thought, just the whole setup of it, that by keeping them that close, and then to have, because I emotionally, I see it like as a betrayal, but you kind of talked me out when you had mentioned that, like, she does immediately stop using, I think it was dream style magic or whatever. Basically, she takes the dreams of others and uses that as the energy source for her magic to make more impressive magic. But as soon as she learned, because Croy brought it to her, it was Croy's recommendation to use the dream style or whatever magic. And so once she revealed that side effect, that's when Chariot stopped using it. And I had forgotten that, she immediately stops using it.
The whole thing is like Croy just being like kind of, because the whole thing is that that Chariot wants to like show off magic to the world, while also kind of like, yeah, finding like the final word and such. But it's like, yeah, she's been putting on performances, but because she can only do magic, she can only do so much with the magic she has, so they get like less and less popular. So then Croy, being all like her scientific manipulative side, is like, hey, try out this magic, and she's like, sure. She does the magic, it's like, it becomes like so blooming and beautiful. She's like, wow, it's amazing. And Croy's like, yeah, too bad it's like taking their magic power. And she's like, what? And she's like, oops, did I forget to tell you? And she's like, she doesn't say, but she's basically like, fuck off, and she doesn't do it anymore. But then of course, like, then she becomes so desperate that she's like, I need to do something, fucking SA2, blow up the moon. Oops.
Blow up the moon.
Which was such a genius thing, because it's like, yeah, throughout the whole series, the moon has like a weird like symbol on it, and like, oh, I guess that's just an aesthetic purpose. But then it's like, no, Chariot just fucked up the moon. Like, wow, that's actually great.
And this whole twist, like, not just affects Chariot and Akko, which again, that's probably the darkest aspect, is that, to me, I just think of Akko, where the person who inspired and basically helped you grow the most initially hurt you from the beginning. So, like, I like that too. Just looking at that idea of, in that process of, teaching and inspiring other people, that you can inadvertently or by complete accident hurt other people, and just how to deal with that as well. That, even when you make things with the bestest of intentions, that some people can be hurt by the things you make while also being inspired, or they can be literally the same person that you inspire and hurt. So just every time I watch basically the last or the episode where it's Chariot's backstory and then Diana going to talk to Akko about what happened, I cry every time. Like, that is not something I'm not emotionally ready to go through those episodes without tears.
And then the thing about that makes like Diana different, like, yeah, because there's the whole during like Diana's like whole like the several episode arc, there's like the whole thing where she like, because you see throughout the series like she's like investigating and like looking into the words, and like because she knows that Akko has like, she knows the shiny rod and she's able to figure out like what the shiny rod is, and she's like looking into it. So like there's this whole thing of like, oh yeah, she's definitely, and like in the very first episode, I mean, I didn't realize this in the movie that yeah, like Diana is in the Chariot crowd, but it's much more obvious in the first episode. So it's like, oh, that, oh yeah, she's there, she likes Chariot too, so she has that connection. So there's this thing of like, oh, she like there's the point where she like flat out says to Akko is like, oh yeah, I am a little jealous that like, oh, the shiny rod chose you and that you have this, even though like, oh, I've been looking into it. But like, unlike Croy, who is like becomes so bitter about it and tries to like basically like sabotage her in order as like some kind of revenge, Diana's like, oh, she's like she is a little jealous, but it's like, oh, but that is Akko, that is odd, like Akko was given to it. Akko has a thing. I might do some stuff to try and help her, but it's like she has to do, and like she's content with it. And I feel like that is something that is like great about like, yeah, like that shows like her maturity of like, oh, she isn't like, she's not gonna let something like that like get to her, and she's able to like see, and yeah, when she sees like of how like Akko's been able to do like unlock everything all like on her own, then like she's able to be like, oh yeah, she puts that trust in like, oh, she knows what she's doing, and it's like I don't feel like I need to do it just because I have like some like inflated ego. Like she felt like she should do it because, oh, she doesn't know who else is going to do it. But it's like by seeing Akko be able to do it, she's like, oh, then yeah, she trusts in Akko. And then it's like, yeah, by that end, when she shows up into how that she's the one who has like the talk with Akko and like getting her to kind of like basically come to terms. And it's like, yeah, the fact that, yeah, that she's able, the fact that she's the one who does that, which is of course, yeah, again, completely opposite of Croy, which ends up like who constantly keeps trying to beat the shit out of her, and then the end is just kind of whining of like, well, when she gets her stick, and she's like, why am I not good enough? And it's like, I maybe I want to feel bad for you, but again, it's like, because it ultimately doesn't matter. It's like, again, it's kind of in the same reason why it's in like the similar reason of like why I don't like Bakugo and Sasuke and like those type of characters, because because their issue, because their issues is very much kind of derived on a sense of like, yeah, a egotistical like bitterness of like, I am the best and I need to be proven to be the bestest even if it doesn't matter. And it's just kind of like this thing of like, yeah, like and I think that is very much like an element of like, oh, why they were never why those two were never able to complete the shiny rod is because Chariot had Croy with her, but a very half-assed Croy who is just kind of sniding the whole way, while with Akko figured out all the words through her growing connections with everybody. A support
system.
Yeah, the fact
like that's part of the rod's magic. Is that no one who was like a loner would have been able to get all the words. It's not even within the nature of some of the words. Like some of the words are like literal things you have to tell someone else.
I mean, like the final word is like, the final word means connect with other people and your dreams will grow. Which, of course, it's like, yeah, that makes sense considering she was all on her own and Croy was trying to, like, yeah, screw her up. So that when
wasn't supporting her dreams, no.
Yeah, so it gets to that point where it's like, yeah, when she's crying, like, about that, she's like, oh, it's just the weird thing, like, when the spirit thing shows up and she's like, why aren't you doing anything for me? And it's like, no, you're doing everything, like, every single problem has been your own, like, creation. Which is kind of like the thing that kind of slightly bugs me about the end, which is the fact that like kind of the big final thing that they have to deal with is something of Croy's making. And I feel like it just kind of like puts it in a thing of like, oh yeah, again, everything is her fault. Like all of her issues are her own fault, but they don't really seem to treat it as if it's Croy's fault. It's just kind of like, oops, there's a problem we have to solve. Let's solve it, rather than being like, yeah, we're fixing your mistake. And it's like
made an oopsie magic mistake.
And fixing your mistake that shouldn't exist in the first place, because again, this only exists because it's not even like, because she's first introduced as like, oh, this person who's like, yeah, revolutionary magic, kind of like this combination of science and the science and magic. So it's like, I thought she was going to be, oh, this person who kind of like says like, oh, the old magic is dead, let's bring on the new magic. And then Akko is going to be the one who's like, oh no, there is still like good in the old magic, and kind of like that's how she would fight. But instead it's like, oh no, it's just the bitter sense of she just wanted the attention and she just wants to be considered special. And it's like, yeah, she creates her own giant dark rod, but calls it the no. She makes fun of her calling it the shiny rod, and then she makes a giant she makes it her giant life fiber machine and calls it the noir rod. And it's like, you're no bet. Again, I don't know if this is intentional, but it's like, yeah, it just shows her the childishness of Croy, that is just, oh, she's no better than the person that she's supposedly looking down on, because it's like, oh, all she cares about is just, yeah, being superior. And then it's like, yeah, she'll straight up attempt to kill her protege for no reason other than just to make her miserable,
just to fuck with her.
Because everything with Akko is just, everything with Akko, it like has nothing to do with like, oh, trying to stop Akko. It's just to fuck with Ursula.
Just to get in the way of whoever had the rod. She cared not for who the rod. It could have been any of the girls, and Croy would have like been after her and would have been trying to just get rid of her. It's kind of the whole like, if I can't have it, no one can. Which, you know, is the contrast of the rod's power, of the rod's purpose, of like, you know, connecting and inspiring others and stuff.
And then when you have like, by the end, when it's like, yeah, Croy's mistake, when the girls, I mean, like, when the girls pretty much like, yeah, quote unquote forgive her and just kind of like just let it like breeze by with no problem, and like her machine things take over a missile that's about to destroy everything, and she's like, it's hopeless, let's not do anything. And Akko's like, no, let's at least try, and they proceed to not do anything. And it's like, don't you think that these two powerful adult witches should at least like help? But it's like, no, she just kind of sits back and lets the kids fix her mistakes. And it's like, again, like it's kind of like, and this is like at the point where she's supposedly changed, but it's like, no, again, it's just still like that ego of just, oh no, I don't think anything will fix, so I'm not going to do anything. And then it's like, although even then it's kind of like a thing, it's a weird thing of, because again, like that ending is like, oh, everybody sees the witches coming together to stop the missile, and it's like, oh, that is what leads to like them having faith in magic again. It's like, oh, like they see the witches like trying to save the day, and it's like they're trying to save a day by a thing that Croy manipulated. So it's kind of this thing of like, oh, because of Croy's like screw ups, it's like because of
her whole experiments. She had a series of experiments, even because the whole second half has basically, they give the characters basically like a whole nother episode, which is cool because you know, Amanda's episode was more of the race, and then they bring her back to when they break into the boys' school, which that's a great episode. And that's also where it's like, yeah, I definitely see that y'all saw Utna too. That's how I know that Akko and Diana are lesbians. It's like you put Amanda in that suit with that sword, like so no, that's so you have that whole episode, and then Constance gets probably the best episode in the entire show. Like, to me, I think it's always fun. Constance episode where they build the giant robot for the ghost hunt, because I think it's always interesting if someone were to watch Little Witch Academia having like not pulled the trigger and like would get to the point with the giant robot and be like, why is there a giant robot? And then you'd have to be like, well, once upon a time there was a show called Gunbuster, and they just kept making it over and over. But I love the whole robot episode. The animation on it is amazing. The characterization for Constance is super cool too. Like all of the episodes where Akko helps the friends, like they're all super good, because, you know, it kind of gives you that change in perspective where, you know, the first half of the show you kind of saw Akko interact with everyone as this goof who's just running her mouth and not putting in any work, and then the second half, you know, you have the same situations of all her friends need some help, and she's the one that's not willing to back down and is the most willing to help out because she believes in herself and believes in you. And so, yeah, it lets her build up this whole crew of witches to help out with that final missile launch, which, a missile that's not only like trying to destroy everyone, it's specifically powered by hate comments and negative points generated by the worst version of Cookie Clicker. Like, damn, Croy, you really went into this one with like, you want to develop an app, and you just decided to fuck shit up after that.
Yeah, I was not expecting going into that one of the main threats of the conflict was fans fighting over a football game. I was not thinking
best.
that was, yeah.
You thought it was the D plot or something. You're like, why does this keep getting brought up? I'm like, because it's gonna be the final boss, bro. You're over here thinking Croy's the final boss for some reason, which I was laughing at that because you, like you said, you instantly were like villain. I'm like, not quite.
Well, I mean, technically, because it's like, I mean, the whole thing is that Croy is kind of like using her magic to kind of like to forcefully like make the people like angrier, and then at the same time she has like an app that like people are like in order to make you like less stressful. It's like, oh, they're basically playing Cookie Clicker on their phones just to be like, oh god, these fucking British Yankees fighting over their goddamn kickball game. I gotta tap away my stress. And it's like she
literally made an app to make you stressed and an app to make you de-stress, and then she was hoping to just siphon off the energy off of it. And I think it's kind of cool too how they do show that the different emotions have different colors too. So like all the red magic that she uses there is like, it's meant to be hate, because they have a scene where like she's going through different emotions, and she mentions that like hate was the closest to like full magic power, and that's why she decided to siphon off that energy as well. I think they're trying to use that scene to be like, see, she wasn't like trying to hurt people. It just happened that hate was the most energy filled resource apparently we give off.
it was like hate, anxiousness, fear. It was like all the negative emotions, and then it's like, oh, and it's like the Akko, and then it's like the Akko save the day with like, oh, happiness, joy,
and believing in yourself
and love.
Right?
It's Trigger once again ending the show with, that's the power of love.
It's the only acceptable way for Trigger shows to end. Yeah, Akko has her whole like line up with all her friends. She helps them out. She proves that she's had growth with her magic. Then
I mean, the ending, well, because the ending is pretty much they make a giant like several stories, like
super broom.
Super broom, and the whole thing is that each character is like pushing the other buddy to go forward until it's just Diane and Akko together. So it's like, it's everybody support. It's not just everybody like taking the ring. It's everybody literally like giving each other the push that they need in order to accomplish the task.
Again, this is a show about inspiring people and what you do to help each other and all that stuff. Because, like, I thought it was really sad, too, just when you mentioned the scene where Croy basically straight up tries to murder Akko by sending her, like, on a tree that's ready to bloom, like, death pollen that'll take what little power she's already denied. Like, she's already not in the best situation with her magical powers, and Croy's out here like, nope, I'm ready to sap it all away. And then it just becomes a whole lesson of Akko learning to like say thank you and be appreciative of what Professor Ursula's done with protecting her, and even if there's limitations like saying you can't do this or that, that's not due to negative emotions, just people caring about you and stuff. So no, I really like just throughout the whole show that the 7 words aren't just like, they're not just a throwaway gag. They are super meaningful to the themes and to the message that the show is trying to give about, affirming people and inspiring them. And even if you hurt them, to still get back and like make the best out of it. But yeah, all the friends, once Akko is able to like use the power of friendship to get the final word, she's able to get the stick that Croy threw away. Because I love that whole like idea there where she had it, she just threw it away because it wasn't what she thought it was. But being able to just believe in it, she makes her super like power wand and has full power of the magic, and then everyone uses friendship to support each other and push the missile, and then like the missile starts getting live streamed globally because they need to start generating some like belief magic right here, right now, because you got to fight the hate comments. Like, what you gonna do? Let negative YouTube comments blow up the world? No, that's like the worst way we can go out.
And all over a soccer game. It's like it could have been anything else, but it's
for
like
sports
no.
drama, guys. Could you imagine? Could you imagine fucking Summer Wars in the
Two
world?
countries going to war?
Yeah.
Yeah. Over the reaction to a soccer game.
Yeah, I forgot to also mention that the ending part is also where Little Witch Academia turns into the another remake of our summer games, because we always need more nuke launches to get stopped by kids on the internet, and the magic is kind of internety, so this is basically Summer Wars all over again.
And then and then they all turn Super Saiyan. So this is also our Sonic Adventure 2 of the day.
Yeah, we missed it, but we get our Gunbuster ending. We get. I think it's really cool that with this show, it's not Akko by herself. That it's Akko and Diana, because again, it's in that last fight. Akko, before they do a couple episodes before, she mentions that she wishes to fly through the sky and transform into magical things and inspire people. And I think it's really cool that in that final battle, it's like a checklist. Like, she flies through the sky on the fastest broom. She transforms into all kinds of things, all of the things that she could possibly turn into. And I think she inspires the world to give her like all of the believing power that they possibly can. I like that the flying Nimbus shows back up again and is their broom of choice for their final attack. But yeah, I think it's really cool that it's Akko and Diana together, because it just kind of shows that she's doing her best. Like, even if she couldn't be in that position by herself, she's only using the most powerful weapon because she's there with a support system there. So I really like that, just that whole, it's a support on her to help her be at her most powerful. And then they hold the bow together, and it's huge, and it's the coolest bow ever. And they do the shiny arc at the end of the series, but at the end of the movie, it's a ballista, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like because also the shiny rod acts in like different ways in the movie. Like in the movie, it kind of like acts like it can like store magical power and act as kind of like the radars that they use in the show of like that can like store magic, so they can like use it like away from the Sorcerer's Stone. It's like like the shiny rod does that in the Enchanted Parade. So it's like again, it gets like it's very much a thing of like they were still trying to figure out how this universe worked, so things are different.
Oh, gotcha. That's a minute thing, because it's not like they say that the rod can't store magic. It's just not something that they did.
I assume in the series, in the context of this series, it can't, just because it's like it feels like that would have been something that would have paid off. But it's like again, like they're both obviously different things. So it's like that was something they changed. Like I'm pretty sure, I don't think that Chariot like sapping Akko's magic is something that was. I don't believe that was something that they came up with in those two. That feels like something that they developed when they were writing the TV show.
I agree. Just with how the reason that it's at the end of the series, and the series is the last piece that they really made. It kind of gives that. I mean, the idea of Diane being at the show, though, I'm really glad that that's at least like carried over to everything. It makes things feel like it's more planned. But
because even in the first movie, they had like a thing where like at the very end where Diana makes a comment where she references something like Shiny Chariot and Akko's like, "Oh, you're a Chariot fan," and she becomes all flustered and be like, So it's like I don't think it wasn't like I don't think it was like intended in the same way of like how it's shown in here, where it's like Diana also lost her power but then got it back. I think it's just the fact that in that first movie they said that she was a Chariot fan too, so that's why they put her there. So it's like,
which is so nice, because it's such a good thing for Akko's character as well, because it's so weird to see a show basically shave down its own character, because they basically took all of Akko's experience and are like, no, the thing that they leave her with is just that she believes in herself more than anyone else. Her and Diana have had such similar experiences that the real I guess the big difference between the two was that Diana had to grow up in a society where like they told her the rules of what magic was. It was either something that she was ridiculed for, or it was, you know, her family's obligation. Versus Akko was able to, you know, figure out what magic meant to her and what how magic made her feel. And so it kind of gives you those the two girls' path to where they were now.
One slight negative over Diana getting like so much attention in that second half is that like yeah that Susie and Lotte kind of like they kind of fade into the background a bit more. As yeah, because in that first half, it's like it's very much that relationship between those three and how like tight knit those are. And it's like you really like feel that relationship between them. But then like by the time of Diana's arc, it's like she becomes more like yeah that she's the one who has that heart to heart talk with Akko, and that she's the one that like yeah is right beside her or like good like saving the day. And it's like oh it makes sense like for those two, and it really like develops that relationship super well. But it's also a thing of like oh it's kind of like but because of that it results in Lotte and Susie kind of just being like, and they end up being like the support. And it's like it's just kind of funny seeing how like she just kind of like suddenly kind of splurges up like just out of nowhere, and then they kind of like have to suffer because of it.
She makes it to supersonic status. Like that's intense. Like they all put the hobo and everything. Shiny Rays plays because you have to have the main thing.
Yeah, then the first opening plays. Although like I personally I like the second opening a bit more than the first. Like visually I like the first opening more than the second, but musically I like the second more than the first. But I think the first opening works perfectly in that ending.
They're both really good. No, I think Mind Conductor as, you know, the opening, the animation, I think I prefer the second one over the first. Because the first opening, you can tell it's a lot of like, hey, remember this scene, know this character, learn this. It feels, the first opening feels very introductory. Versus the second one is like, hey, now characters are walking around and flying and all kinds of different stuff. But
also it's hard to explain, but I like how Akko's face looks in the second opening specifically. I don't know, like the way her mouth is drawn is like she kind of has like a funny like little like a cute bean type mouth. It's like it's hard to describe just the way it's drawn. Is drawn like when she walks, she has like a bounciness to her. It's like it's for some reason like in that particular like opening, it feels like I don't know why, just that always like point stuck out to me. There's also the thing of just like I think one of the other reasons why I just like kept like feeling it as a Western like cartoon is because I kind of already saw a Western cartoon of this, and it's called The Owl House.
Oh yeah,
and it's like, but it's like it's kind of I mean it's in the thing of like so much of the series is like cop. I mean, like you have the girl who you have the main girl who's like the outsider to the magic world, who's like brought in. She doesn't have any like real proficiency in magic, but is still like slowly learning. She has her kind of two dorky best friends. She's got the crazy old. She has the crazy mentor with like a hidden past. She has the rival. She has like the rival who's like the top of the class, who comes from an ancient family, and who then ends up becoming the love interest. So it's like there's like a lot. It's I would say Owl House is like, I mean, like again, this like they're both like pretty much on like the same quality, and it's like I mean like with magic and witch stuff, it's like oh yeah they got the similarities, but it doesn't mean like one. I wouldn't say it's like oh it's a complete ripoff. Like they both got like they're good. Like I mean I definitely think like oh if you've seen Owl House, Little Witch, you just definitely see it. And if you see Little Witch, you should definitely see Owl House. I just say it's like I think it's funny that Owl House is slightly gayer just because they go for the gay teasing and the gay overtones like bit earlier than Little Witch does, so I think that's kind of funny. Like they have their whole like there's a whole the episode like 2/3 of the way through the season where the main character and the rival have like a scene where they're like it's a formal dance where like she's the main girl's dressed up in a suit and the rival girl's dressed up in a dress, and they're doing a dance in order to defeat a monster, and it's like yeah this is the gayest thing that's ever been put on the Disney Channel, and I love it.
Like, are you sure? Because like yeah. You look at Little Witch Academia, though. You have Diana saying that she loves Akko. Yes, she was under the effects of the magical.
She was under the fact of magical bee, and then proceeds to fall in love with herself. So, I take that with a grain of salt.
Which is valid. That's valid and true, and it's what we should all strive for. But not only that, but you have the whole scene where when Akko finds the truth out about Chariot and she runs away, and Diana finds out that no one knows where she is. She goes to Chariot because at that point in the story, she knows that that is Shiny Chariot, and she asks her, like, why aren't you going to go save Akko? And Chariot's basically like, oh, I got something else to do, because she's still feeling all bad and guilty about it. And Diana asks her, what could be more important than Akko? And I dare you to find a gayer line of dialogue in anything. Like that. That's the true meaning of pride right there, is asking Shiny Chariot what could be more important than Akko. Like, that's basically relationship confirmation.
Well, also her conversation with her, like, later, when she, like, that heart to heart, where it's like, oh, that is, like, very much, like, hammering it home. I feel stuff for you.
Like, we are kindred spirits and one and the same. Also, let us hold this super powered magical bow together and fire an arrow of the 7 stars of the Big Dipper. Like, damn.
Also, I have to be fair. It's not just gay, but it's bi, because it's like they do have a lot of things of like, oh, Akko has they have like that little like flirting connection with Andrew.
Oh, Andrew.
So you got like that, yeah. And then it's like
I like how we made it this far without talking about any of the male characters. Fuck the male characters. Like, this is the best show about girls. Like, good.
I mean, it is good that that at least like guy exists, because there are the shows where like just everyone's a girl and it's like, oh, guys don't exist, and they're like, okay, there's at least a guy in here. Okay,
I figure that's where they got the translation of the like bully kids or whatever, the kids that didn't like magic in the parade. I guess they may have kind of just transferred them over to the preparatory boys, because there's a couple of them too. It's not like there's just one male character.
Yeah, and also the mayor's like got taken over by his dad, who's like the guy in like in charge of the guy who's like in charge of like the prep school, and he's just like the snooty guy of like, oh, I'm looking down on magic's useless and we want to shut everything down.
Yeah, I think like one of them is like a defense secretary or whatever. Like, these are all like the higher echelons of fake UK government, and none of them know who launched the missile.
Yeah, and so like Akko, I think would fit like very much in bi, and like same with Lewis in Owl House. It's like she's also very clearly like, oh, they've even said like that she's supposed to be bi. So it's like, yeah, I think that is I do think that is an important distinction of like, oh yeah, it's not just gay, but it's like it's also very true. It's also bi rights, and it's like, oh, very much you want to support the bi rights of like I think like Diana is probably like the lesbian of there, but it's like, yeah, Akko I see very much as being bi.
I wouldn't even say like Diana is lesbian. I would just say she's an Akko-sexual. Like, she's just very in lesbians with Akko.
Well, like, I mean, like, there is the whole thing where it's like, oh yeah, with Andrew, and she's just like, I have like absolutely no interest in you whatsoever, and it's like that makes me that makes me feel like, yeah, it feels like more so on the lesbian spectrum of like, oh, I'm just not into. Well, Akko has like the thing of like, oh yeah, she can be attracted to the kind of attracted looking guy, as well as also the very attractive looking girl right beside her. I was nearly interested in checking out the video game, because I know they made a video game. And I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. I'd want to see it. I asked my friend, who's a huge Little Witch like nut, and I was like, oh hey, is this game worth it? And she's like, it's fine. It's like it has, if you like want like more interactions with the characters, it's worth checking out. But it's like gameplay wise, it's just kind of very meh. So I was like, oh, damn, that's a shame.
It is. Maybe we'll, like, quick look at it or something. That way we can be like... Because you never know. It could be a whole nother timeline where, like, there's also subtle differences as well.
It is a shame that apparently that Little Witch Academia, they were supposed to do a second season, and that they were working on it, but I guess, like, plans fell through. And then, like, because, like, the director, Yoshinari... they ended up taking, like, their whole crew ended up making Brand New Animal. So it's like, yeah, Brand New Animals started out as like, yeah, development as a Little Witch sequel. So that'll be really interesting to go in to be like, oh, if it ends up being like, I guess depending on how I feel about that, either it was a good thing, like it's disappointing, but it's good because we got this like new project, or to be like, oh, I just wish it was a Little Witch sequel. So it's like, that'll be interesting to see once we finally get to that.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad though, at least that they're still working. So, you know, even whether it's Little Witch 3 or a new thing, I'm just glad that they keep the teams around and they're still making amazing anime.
The Little Witch is it is a very fun, just charming, cheerful, just series all around. It's one I think like anybody can check out. There's always like a bunch of trigger series that have like a thing of like, oh, this is very much like for certain people who like certain things, but it's like, Little Witch, if you love comedy series, like traditional, like the comedy series, like fantasy series, magic, just anything really. If you want like just something with a good time, it's like this is definitely.
I was gonna say, if you've read or seen something that made you feel good and you ever thought, man, I would love to meet the person who made this, just watch this show. Just watch this show. And also, hopefully, they didn't have like a magical curse on set thing that saps you of your magic. Like that. We also got to hope for that as well. How would you say, just real quick, just because since this is our second instance of an SA2 ending complete with Die Buster pose, like, how do you feel this? How do you think this fares compared to Space Mom versus We Are Closing People?
Nah, so Space Mom versus We Are Closing People is still like top tier. I don't know if you count like would Luluco fighting the Black,
and
that
there's
count?
Luluco.
Yeah, I think that would be too. I feel like the style of Akko, the design of Akko and Diana, like Super Saiyan, is like excellent, and that's like. But I feel like the fact that they're the thing that they're fighting is a missile with a face is just kind of like leaves a little thing like, oh, the whole thing is like they're fighting a missile, and then they have to like at the last minute they throw in a face on it just to give it some kind of a character, and I'm like, it's like that kind of like slightly puts it down a bit because it's like I wish it was like something more dynamic, I guess, personal or dynamic in some way, but it's like the Diana and Akko like bring it up a bit versus it's kind of like in SA2 proper. It's like where it's Live and Learn pretty much carries that whole thing. It's like it's because you got like Sonic and Shadow fighting against a lizard with a space station stuck up its ass. It's like that's kind of weird in its own way, but it's like Live and Learn just gives it all of the end thing that makes it like the best. The reason why we call it the SA2 is because of Live and Learn.
It's exactly. No, because I love when Shiny Ray plays, and I like you said, the animation right there when they do that final attack. But you're kind of right. Just that last final boss scene.
I will say
it's just a missile. In
terms of quality overall for the series, if I had to rank, again, because I put Kiesniver, I ranked like where I put that. I'd probably say this is right below Luluco, because I feel like Luluco just felt like a bit more like just it feels a bit more like special and creative and like shocking. That just made me be like, oh, I just like it a bit more than that. Well, this would be like either an A- or a B+ of just like, this is just a very good thing. Like it'd be Kill la Kill, Inferno Cop, Luluco, and then this are like my top 4 Trigger projects so far.
I would agree with that list. That's actually a really strong in a really strong order as well.
Yeah, which I mean, like the first three being Imaishi just makes me really excited for Promare, because I'm like, oh god, where's that gonna fit?
Then we can rank that SA2 scene as well. And we can judge who is the best SA2.
But yeah, again, just kept saying it over and over. It's just a straight up good. It's just a straight up feel good series, and I definitely it's on Netflix, so it's like it's very easy to check out. So it's like
it's super easy to watch. I've rewatched it a couple times. Just usually with like the other shows, it's like I haven't seen it in a while, and I've had to go back and do a rewatch. I've actually re-seen Little Witch a couple times just because it's pretty nice as a feel-good show. It's one of those really good depression shows, just because the show will not stop beating into your head that just believe in yourself and that be happy and have people support you, and things will work out. It's like, all right, you're right, anime. I can get through this rut. So like even just on a personal level, I adore this show and I love watching it.
I have a very quick question. Are the original short movie and Enchanted Parade on Netflix as well?
I believe they are with the English dub.
Okay, no, because for some reason they aren't on Canadian Netflix. And I don't know why. Like I had to use other means in order to watch them because they were just not on there. And I'm like, what? Why are they not on here? It's like, I have to assume, because like everywhere I looked that said, oh, those are both on Netflix, and I looked like what the video that I watched was like, oh, was clearly like ripped from Netflix. So I was like, I assume it's on Netflix, but it's like, I guess in Canada it's not. It was just so weird to me. Because also
It is very weird.
because I do definitely, because I think that original pilot, just for the animation alone, is definitely worth it, just to see when Trigger just when Trigger has the time and money to go all out, and you're like, wow, these are like, I posted on Twitter the one of like Akko like in her bed, like when she's like talking with them, and she like gets really angry and like jumps up and like hits her head on the bed, and like, oh, like, because you see that all that detail of like her face, like she's staring, she gets excited, she gets anxious, she gets angry, her hair, like her face turns all red, she bumps into the thing, she got the comedy of her bumping into the bed, and then she reacts, and it's like all, it's like everything like just being so like intricate and just like detailed. It's just, oh, it's just like, it's so visually appealing. It reminds me of, like, it's a weird thing to say, but it reminds me of like an Aardman project, of just like when you use like a stop motion shorts, where it's just, they have moments where it's just the animators just showing off, just seeing what they can do, and it's just like, yeah, just even for that alone is just, oh, just something I like. I'd want to rewatch just that over and over, just for the beauty and how like gorgeous it looks.
For the beauty, yes. I've rewatched like the ending a few times as well too, just for just for the feel good hype mood that it gives me. So yeah, this is a really fun show. Anyone should watch it. People who like animation should watch it. People who this would be a show that'd be like, oh, are someone who likes teaching as well. Educators should watch this anime. To be so bold.
So yeah, that was 4 hours. Damn. I mean, like, I knew there was a lot to talk about, but I was like, holy crap, I didn't know there was that much to talk about. Damn. Alright, so thank you for checking in on this. Depending on like both this episode and the previous one, if that's how it ended up being. So it's like, yeah, you're gonna hear like our original audio or whatever, that this is supposed to be just one episode, but split it into two, because I don't blame you for not wanting to listen to all of that all in one go.
We couldn't help ourselves. We watched some anime and then we just wanted to talk about it.
So hopefully, I mean, it'll be it's going to be very, very interesting next, because this next one is going to be one where it's like, there's going to be a lot to talk about, so I have no idea how long it's going to be, but I also kind of hope that could end up being in one episode, because they are both very thematically connected, and it would be very interesting, which is my revisit of Darling in the Franxx, and my first time viewing of SSSS Gurredeman.
Oh, this is gonna be so fun. Like, if you thought Stefan going off on Kiesniver was much, no. Just wait till I completely rework Darling in the Franxx plots to make it more gay and make it better.